The silent call, the Elixir collective chamber pulsed with nervous light, the bioluminescent walls reflecting the agitation of the 12 council members gathered in the ancient meeting space. Their slender, translucent bodies, typically glowing, with a calm azure, now flickered with anxious amber hues. Above them, through the crystal dome that had never known war, the sky burned with an unnatural violet as their sun slowly dimmed. "The sixth colony has gone silent," announced Elder Thalia, her voice bypassing sound to resonate directly in the minds of the gathered council. 3 billion elixir, simply gone. No one screamed. No one wept. The elixir had evolved beyond such primitive displays over their 50,000 years of uninterrupted peace. Yet the psychic ripple of collective grief was palpable, disturbing, the carefully maintained harmony of their telepathic network. "The void advances faster than our models predicted," said Sentinel Corin, the youngest member of the council and head of the rarely utilized defense division. "At current rates, they will reach our homeworld in 17 rotations." The elixir had never needed weapons. Evolution on their tranquil world had blessed them with powerful telepathic abilities, but cursed them with fragile physical forms. Their technological advancement had focused on harmony, art, and exploration, never destruction. "What of the Galactic Communion?" asked Elder Thalia. "Surely our longtime allies will assist us." Sentinel Coron's light dimmed to a somber blue. "All 18 advanced civilizations have declined intervention. They offer sympathy and limited refugee quotas, but nothing more. The void entities are beyond their capacity to confront." The council pulsed with disbelief. For millennia, the elixir had faithfully contributed to the communion, sharing art, philosophy, and scientific discoveries. Now, in their hour of need, they faced abandonment. "There is one option we have not considered," said Coron, their inner light pulsing with an uncharacteristic intensity. "The quantum beacon." The council chamber went still. The quantum beacon was their most powerful communications device, typically used only for scientific research across vast distances. Using it at full power would drain their planetary defense grid's remaining energy, not that their defenses had proven effective against the void. "To contact whom?" Elder Thalia asked. "The communion has already abandoned us." "The uncharted regions," Coron replied. "The forbidden zones." Even in their desperation, the council recoiled. The uncharted regions contained systems deliberately avoided by the communion, worlds with extreme gravity, toxic atmospheres, or worst of all, violent sentience. The death worlds, as they were classified in ancient texts. "You cannot be serious," protested Elder Gen. "Deathworlders are unpredictable, aggressive, and primitive. They still practice violence against their own kind. And yet," Coron countered, "they may be our only hope. The void entities feed on stable, advanced energy patterns, like our telepathic network and technology. Perhaps primitive, chaotic entities might disrupt their feeding pattern." After hours of debate, with the voids, approach visible as more stars blinked out in their night sky, the council made their decision. They would activate the quantum beacon and broadcast a desperate plea to the uncharted regions of space. With solemn purpose, Sentinel Coron led the way to the ancient transmission chamber deep beneath the capital city. The quantum beacon, a HFY spiraling crystal structure taller than 10 elixir, hummed with dormant power. "What message shall we send?" asked Elder Thalia, her 3-fingered hands hovering over the control interface. "Deathworlders will not understand our telepathic language." Coron had prepared for this. Simple concepts that transcend language barriers, mathematical sequences first, then visual distress signals, followed by 3 simple concepts: help, danger, dying. As the quantum beacon activated, drawing the last reserves of the capital's power grid, the message burst outward through subspace, reaching thousands of uncharted systems simultaneously. The elixir, their bodies weak from the energy expenditure, could only wait and hope that somewhere among the stars, someone would answer. Lieutenant Commander Aisha Khatri jolted awake as the alarm at her monitoring station blared to life. The United Defense Forces Deep Space Listening Post Theta 9 was typically the most boring assignment in Earth's space program, monitoring the silent sector, where no signals had ever been detected. Until now. "What the hell?" she muttered, checking the readouts. The signal was unlike anything in their database. A complex mathematical sequence followed by visual patterns that even the most advanced Earth AI struggled to fully decode. But the intent was clear: distress. 12 hours later, Aisha stood nervously before the UDF Security Council, Earth's highest military authority. The chamber was filled with the projected faces of admirals, generals, and intelligence directors from across Earth's unified government. "You're certain this is not a trap?" Admiral Chen asked, her weathered face betraying no emotion. "The signal originates from the Iota Persei system, well beyond our explored territory." "Our analysis confirms it's a genuine distress call, Admiral," Aisha replied, "and based on the signal pattern, whatever is happening there is catastrophic, possibly extinction level." The council erupted in debate. Earth had achieved faster-than-light travel only 20 years ago, and had encountered no sentient alien species, only the ruins and artifacts of long-abandoned outposts. First contact would be challenging enough without walking into a potential interstellar conflict. "We have no obligation to respond," General Wachowski argued. "Our charter limits operations to protecting Earth and its colonies." "With respect, General," Aisha countered, "this could be humanity's introduction to the galactic community. How we respond defines us as a species." After hours of deliberation, Admiral Chen made the final decision. "We will send a response team, small, agile, and prepared for anything. Captain Nadia Chen will command the UDF Stormbreaker." Aisha couldn't hide her surprise. "Your daughter, Admiral?" "The best tactical mind in the fleet," Admiral Chen replied coolly. "And someone who understands that diplomacy and force are two sides of the same coin." Captain Nadia Chen stood on the bridge of the UDF Stormbreaker, watching the stars streak by as they traveled at superluminal speeds. At 38, she had the focused intensity of someone accustomed to making life-or-death decisions. Her crew, a mix of military specialists and first-contact experts, represented Earth's best and most adaptable minds. "ETA to Iota Persei, 17 minutes, Captain," announced Lieutenant Park from the navigation console. Nadia nodded, turning to her XO, Commander Marcus Jackson. "Status report?" Marcus swiped through his datapad. "All systems nominal. Combat teams on standby. First contact protocols loaded into all translation systems. Medical has prepped isolation chambers in case of biological incompatibility." "And the new toys?" Nadia asked quietly. Marcus lowered his voice. "The prototype EM pulse cannon is online, but untested in field conditions. Same for the gravitational disruptors. We're flying with experimental tech against an unknown threat, Captain." "Then we'd better not miss," Nadia replied with a grim smile. The Stormbreaker dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Iota Persei system, and the bridge crew fell silent at the sight that greeted them. 3 of the system's planets were now lifeless, husks. The star itself burned with diminished light, its corona laced with unnatural purple filaments. Orbiting the 4th planet, still blue and vibrant, were massive dark shapes, each the size of a small moon. They weren't solid objects, but rather shifting masses of darkness that seemed to absorb both light and sensor scans. "My God," whispered Dr. Amelia Reyes, the xenobiologist. "They're feeding on the star itself." Nadia's tactical mind quickly assessed the situation. "Full sensor sweep. I want to know what we're dealing with before we make contact." "Captain," called Lieutenant Park, "I'm detecting a transmission from the planet's surface. Same frequency as the distress call." "Put it through." The message wasn't in words but in mathematical sequences and images. The ship's AI translated, "Danger near, help quickly, land at coordinates." Nadia made her decision. "Tactical alert. Shields at maximum. We're going in, but we're bringing insurance. Prepare the assault shuttle and a security team. Let's introduce ourselves to whoever sent that call for help." As the Stormbreaker descended toward the coordinates, Nadia watched the dark entities through the view screen. They showed no reaction to the human vessel. Either they didn't notice or didn't care about the comparatively tiny ship. They don't register us as a threat, Nadia realized aloud. That might be our only advantage. The ship landed in a vast plaza surrounded by crystalline structures that would have been breathtaking if not for the signs of damage. Buildings had collapsed, and much of the city appeared to be without power. Nadia led the landing party herself, 12 personnel including security specialists, medical officers, and first contact experts. As the airlock opened, their environmental suits confirmed that the atmosphere was breathable, though richer in oxygen than Earth's. Gravity approximately 0.8 of Earth standard, reported Dr. Reyes. Temperature perfect, no detectable pathogens. It's paradise, or was. They had taken only a few steps when they saw them, the inhabitants of this world. Tall, slender beings with partially translucent skin that glowed with inner light. They moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost ethereal, and their three-fingered hands were raised in what appeared to be a greeting gesture. One stepped forward, its body pulsing with blue-green light. No mouth moved, but suddenly, all the humans heard a voice in their minds. You came. You actually came, but you are not what we expected. You are from the death worlds. Nadia stepped forward, removing her helmet in a gesture of trust. I am Captain Nadia Chen of the United Defense Force vessel Stormbreaker, representing Earth and humanity. We received your distress call. The alien's light pulsed rapidly and the telepathic voice returned with unmistakable shock. Earth, the forbidden world, you are the species that still wars among itself? Before Nadia could respond, a shadow passed overhead. One of the dark entities had broken orbit and was descending directly toward the city. The alien's light changed to pulsing red. The void comes. They have sensed your technology. Different, chaotic, primitive. They are curious and hungry. Nadia turned to her security team, her voice calm despite the approaching threat. Defensive positions. Prepare the EM pulse. First contact is about to get complicated. The alien watched in fascination as the humans, the Death Worlders, prepared to fight an enemy their entire civilization. Death World diplomacy. The void entity descended like a living storm, a writhing mass of darkness that distorted the very air around it. The Elixir civilians scattered in silent panic, their bodies flashing alarmed patterns of crimson and yellow. Unlike humans, they didn't scream. Their terror transmitted through the collective telepathic network in waves that made Dr. Reyes stagger under the psychic pressure. They're evacuating, she gasped, pressing her hands to her temples. Their fear, it's overwhelming. Sentinel Koran remained with the human landing party, his inner light pulsing with anxiety as he watched the strange creatures prepare for battle. The concept was foreign to him. The Elixir had no word for soldier in their language. The void consumes energy, Koran transmitted directly into their minds. Your technology, your power sources, they will be drained. We have lost billions already. You cannot fight them. Captain Chen's expression hardened as she watched the entity approach. Humanity has a long history of fighting things we're told we cannot defeat. Lieutenant Rivera, deploy the gravity anchors. With practiced efficiency, Rivera and her team positioned 4 devices around the plaza, each no larger than a backpack. When activated, they hummed with power, generating an invisible field between them. What are those devices? Asked Koran, his curiosity temporarily overcoming his fear. Gravitational disruptors, Chen explained. Experimental technology. If these things feed on energy, let's see how they handle warped spacetime. The void entity reached the edge of the gravitational field and paused. The darkness seemed to ripple, as if testing this new resistance. Then, to everyone's shock, tendrils of shadow began to extend through the barrier, seemingly unaffected. It's adapting, muttered Commander Jackson, his rifle raised though he doubted conventional weapons would have any effect. Plan B, Chen ordered calmly. Deploy the EM pulse cannon. 2 security officers wheeled forward a device that resembled an oversized satellite dish. As they powered it up, Koran transmitted urgently, Your weapons will not harm the void. They have no physical form to damage, Chen smiled grimly. We're not trying to damage it, we're trying to disrupt it. The EM pulse cannon fired. Not a visible beam, but a massive electromagnetic pulse that distorted electrical systems across the entire plaza. The humans' equipment, hardened against such attacks, barely flickered. But the void entity's reaction was immediate and violent. The mass of darkness convulsed, its tendrils thrashing wildly. A high-pitched sound, not quite a scream but something equally disturbing, filled the air as the void entity retreated upward, away from the pulse's epicenter. Had deemed unbeatable. What happened next would change the course of galactic history forever. Corin's light pulsed with astonishment. It felt pain. How is this possible? Pure energy forms still have patterns, Chen explained. Disrupt the pattern severely enough, and you disrupt the entity itself. Basic physics, just applied. Creatively, the other elixir nearby had stopped their retreat, watching in stunned silence as the supposedly invincible predator fled from these strange, bipedal creatures with their primitive technology. For the first time since the void had appeared in their system, hope flickered through the collective consciousness. But Chen's triumph was short-lived. In orbit above, the remaining void entities had noticed the commotion. 3 more dark masses were now descending toward the city. They're coming, Corin warned, his light dimming with dread. Many more than before. Chen opened her comm channel to the Stormbreaker. Alvarez, do you copy? We need extraction and ship support immediately. Captain Chen's tactical mind was already formulating a new plan. We can't fight them all here. We need to draw them away from the population center. She turned to Corin. Do you have any high-energy installations away from your cities? Power plants, research facilities? Corin's light pulsed thoughtfully. The Stellar Observatory on the northern continent. It contains our most powerful energy source, the quantum core that powers our research facilities. Perfect, Chen nodded. That's our new battlefield. We need to evacuate as many of your people as possible from that area. As the Stormbreaker descended for extraction, Corin transmitted the plan to the Elixir Council. Their response was immediate. Evacuation orders rippled through the collective consciousness, directing all Elixir to move away from the observatory complex. Aboard the Stormbreaker, humans and Elixir worked rapidly to prepare for the confrontation. The ship's engineering team, led by Lieutenant Commander Patel, modified the EM pulse technology to operate on a much larger scale. This will drain almost all our power reserves, Patel warned as they worked. We'll be running on emergency systems. Afterward. If it doesn't work, power reserves will be the least of our problems, Chen replied. In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Reyes was fascinated by the Elixir physiology. Their neural network is like nothing I've ever seen, she told Chen. Not individual brains, but a collective consciousness. And the void entities, they're not just feeding on energy, they're feeding on the connections between minds. Corin, who had joined them aboard the ship, confirmed this. The void drains the collective first, then moves to our technologies, and finally to our stellar bodies. Other species in the galactic communion have individualized consciousness. Perhaps why they have survived longer than we have. And why they abandoned you, Chen said quietly. They sacrificed your species to buy themselves time. Corin's light dimmed with sorrow. The communion believes in the preservation of the most advanced civilizations. We are considered expendable. Well, humanity hasn't joined this communion of yours, Chen said firmly, and we don't consider anyone expendable. As the Stormbreaker approached the observatory complex, the tactical display showed all 5 void entities converging on their position. Chen had effectively drawn them away from the Elixir population centers, but now faced the challenge of confronting them all simultaneously. All hands to battle stations, she ordered. Deploy all modified EM pulse arrays. Target the lead entity first. The ship's newly modified weapons fired in perfect synchronicity, sending massive electromagnetic pulses toward the approaching darkness. The lead entity shuddered and recoiled, just as the smaller one had in the plaza. It's working, exclaimed Commander Jackson. But the other entities, witnessing their companions' distress, changed tactics. Instead of approaching directly, they began to spread out, surrounding the Stormbreaker in a spherical formation. They're learning, Chen realized aloud, adapting to our strategy. Suddenly, the ship shuddered as power fluctuations cascaded through its systems. Warning lights flashed across every console. "They're draining our power remotely," reported Lieutenant Park from engineering. "Shields failing. Weapon systems dropping to 60% capacity." Chen watched as the dark entities began to constrict their formation, slowly closing in on the vulnerable ship. Conventional tactics weren't going to work. These entities operated on principles beyond standard military strategy. Then she had an idea, a desperate one. "Koran," she turned to the Elixir Sentinel. "You said the void feeds on connections and patterns. What about chaotic energy? Unpredictable bursts?" Koran's light pulsed with uncertainty. "I do not understand." "The quantum core in the observatory, can we overload it? Create an energy surge so chaotic that the void can't process it?" The Elixir's light flickered rapidly as he considered this. "It would destroy the observatory, millennia of knowledge and research." "But it might save your planet," Chen countered. "Sometimes survival requires sacrifice." After a moment's hesitation, Koran's light steadied. "I will guide your engineers. It can be done." Chen turned to her crew. "New plan. We're going to create the biggest, messiest energy explosion this system has ever seen. Alvarez, take us into the observatory's main research chamber. Patel, prepare to link our core with their quantum technology." "Captain," Jackson protested, "if we overload both cores, we'll be at the center of the explosion." "Not if we time it correctly," Chen replied. "We trigger the overload sequence, then make a blind FTL jump, just far enough to escape the blast radius." "A blind jump could put us anywhere," Jackson warned. "It's against all safety protocols." Chen's smile was grim. "So is extinction. Sometimes the risky play is the only play." As the Stormbreaker descended into the massive observatory dome, the void entities followed, drawn by the concentration of energy. The ship's remaining power was diverted to the engineering team as they worked frantically to interface with the Elixir quantum core. "Connection established," reported Patel after several tense minutes. "We can initiate the overload sequence, but we'll need to manually activate it. Someone has to stay behind." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. Then Lieutenant Rivera stepped forward. "I'll do it, Captain. My specialty is demolitions. I'm the logical choice." Chen looked at her steadily. "You understand what this means?" Rivera nodded. "Someone has to make sure the party starts on time." After a moment, Chen nodded. "The rest of the crew will evacuate to the ship. We'll remain in low orbit until the last possible moment." As the crew prepared for evacuation, Koran approached. Chen privately, his light pulsing with a new intensity. "We have misunderstood your kind," he transmitted. "The Communion called you Death Worlders, primitive, violent, dangerous. But they did not see what I now see." "And what's that?" Chen asked. "That sometimes creation requires destruction. That sacrifice for others is the highest form of existence." His light brightened. "I will stay with your Lieutenant Rivera. 2 hands are better than 1, as you might say." Chen started to protest, but Koran continued. "My people are connected. Through me, they will witness what happens here today. They will know that when the Communion abandoned us, the Death Worlders, they will remember." Lieutenant Rivera and Sentinel Koran watched as the Stormbreaker lifted off, carrying the human crew and several Elixir representatives to safety. Around them, the massive observatory, once the pride of Elixir civilization, hummed with building energy as the quantum core began its carefully orchestrated overload. 3 minutes until critical mass, Rivera noted, checking her instruments. "The void entities are converging on our position, exactly as planned." Koran's light pulsed with curiosity. "Does dying frighten you, Lieutenant?" Rivera's hands moved steadily over the controls as she secured the final sequence. "I'm not dying for nothing, Sentinel. I'm dying so billions can live. That makes all the difference." The dark entities had now fully surrounded the observatory, their tendrils probing at the structure, sensing the building energy, and drawn to it like moths to flame. 2 minutes, Rivera announced. You should go. There might still be time. Corin's light flashed with something like amusement. Deathworlders are not the only ones who understand sacrifice. Together they watched the final countdown as the combined energy of human and elixir technology built toward an unprecedented reaction. The void entities, sensing the impending release, began to withdraw, but too late. Now, Rivera said simply, pressing the final sequence. The explosion was visible from space, a brilliant flash of light that momentarily outshone the dim star itself. The chaotic energy surge, too random to be processed or absorbed, tore through the void entities, dispersing their darkness into the void of space. From the Stormbreaker, maintaining position just outside the blast radius, the crew watched, in solemn silence. The sacrifice had worked. Sensors showed no trace of the void entities remaining in the system. They did it, whispered Commander Jackson. They did, Chen agreed quietly. Now we honor them by making sure it wasn't in vain. 3 weeks later, Captain Chen stood before the UDF Security Council, delivering her report on humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. The elixir are recovering, she explained. Their star is stable again, though diminished. With our help, they've begun rebuilding their world. Admiral Chen, her mother, looked at her steadily. And this Galactic Communion? They abandoned? The elixir to their fate. Yes, Admiral, they deemed them expendable. Just as they've deemed Earth a death world, too primitive and violent to be worthy of contact. The council members exchanged glances. Humanity had finally learned why they had found only abandoned outposts in their space exploration. They had been deliberately avoided, quarantined from the galactic community. The elixir have proposed an alliance, Captain Chen continued. Not membership in the communion, but a separate pact. They recognize that what the communion sees as our weakness, our evolution on a harsh world, our history of conflict, our adaptability in the face of threats, is actually our strength. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. And when the communion finally decides to acknowledge our existence? They already have, Captain Chen replied. The elixir have sent a message throughout the communion networks. They've told the story of how, when abandoned by their ancient allies, it was the Deathworlders who answered their call. How humanity did what the advanced civilizations could not, or would not, do. She paused, allowing a small smile. The elixir ambassador wishes to address the council directly if you'll permit it. At the Admiral's nod, the doors opened, and a tall, slender being entered, its body glowing with soft blue light. Without speaking aloud, its thoughts reached every mind in the room. We called into the darkness, and you answered. You fought what could not be fought. You sacrificed what could not be asked. The communion named you Deathworlders, but we have seen the truth. Where there is death, there is also life. Where there is violence, there is also protection. Where there is destruction, there is also creation. The elixir's light pulsed brighter. The stars are filled with many civilizations, but few who would risk everything for strangers. The communion may have forgotten the meaning of connection, but we have not, and neither have you. As the council chamber fell silent, contemplating the implications of this new alliance, Captain Chen thought of Lieutenant Rivera and Sentinel Coron. Their sacrifice had not just saved the elixir, it had announced humanity's presence to the galaxy in a way no diplomatic mission ever could. The Deathworlders had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again.